Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who is wanted in the country of Romanovia for public assault with a dodgeball. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who throws frickin' lasers.
Some of your intros are jabs, but I like that one.
Yeah, well, it's true. I said to Garrett, I was like, this is probably the most random intro I've had for you ever, but it made me laugh. We have played, this is like what happens whenever you do obscure things together. We've played dodgeball a number of times as grown men. Why? Because we do men's ministry together and we get to go do fun stuff like that.
We take dodgeball so seriously. In our group that last year we went to a place and we didn't like their dodgeballs. So this summer we're like, that's never happening again. So this summer we went on another men's leadership trip and we brought our own dodgeballs. We brought some regulation dodgeballs.
Now, let me tell you why we didn't like the other dodgeballs. It's because they were soft and squishy. We did not feel they inflicted enough pain.
Yeah, you couldn't hurt people enough.
Right. So we went and bought the rubber ones that go pong, like when you hit somebody.
It is a bunch of like grown men playing dodgeball, you know.
Right. I mean, there should be pain involved, right? Like for a lot of people, the pain was just realizing they're not the athlete they were before.
Some people definitely got some tread marks on their face.
There's nothing quite as sweet as seeing someone just get blasted in the face with a dodgeball. Anyways, massive distraction there. Not what we meant to do. But today's episode...
As soon as you said Romanovia, I knew.
You knew where I was going. Yeah, man. That was a reference to our man, White Goodman, And we do the 5 Ds. Dodge, dip, duck, dive, dodge. That's what we do when we're out there. Anyways, today's episode, this is like a door blaster, like a lid lifter. I gotta say, lid lifter is a good term that you use all the time.
I'm excited for this episode.
I am too, and it's on mindset. Now, mindset is one of those terms that's out there.
You could call this whole podcast a mindset podcast.
Yeah, our whole podcast is a mindset podcast. And so what I wanted to do, or what we wanted to do on this, is to really dive into, explore just how powerful mindset is. Well, it's not just us that are tapping into how powerful mindset is. Yeah, I mean, if you think about your mindset, like, go back and look at 1980s or 1970s NFL football players. Like Franco Harris was a big running back in the 70s. He didn't even lift weights.
Yeah, I think about that, and I don't mean to interrupt your thought here.
Wow, it's the nicest interruption you've ever had. It's amazing.
It's not just like it's not just this. Like, go back to sports nutrition, right? Like people just are like, whatever.
Yeah,
like mindset really is this new thing.
It is. That's exactly the point I was going to make. So thank you for interrupting me and stealing all my thunder there, White Goodman. Anyways, yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Is like, back in the 70s, these guys weren't even lifting weights. Now, like even in the past 20, 30 years, sports science has advanced so far. And what was not touched at all was the mentality. So I'll paint the picture for you, G. One of my favorite books, if you're listening to this and you're like, whatever, I'm going to take away one thing from this episode, it's coming. But if you're going to take away 2 things, buy yourself the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yes.
Phenomenal book. It is very much about mindset. It's not just about money. If you're like, oh, money doesn't matter to me. First of all, I don't believe you. Second of all, this book is a lot more about mindset than it is money. He just uses money as the example. It was written in 1937. That's when it was published. Sorry, it was published in 1937. Napoleon Hill died in 1970, and at his death, it had sold 20 million copies, which is an amazing amount of books to sell.
Sure,
right?
Especially at that time.
Exactly. Now, as of the end of 2022, so it sold in the first 33 years, 20 million. In the 50 plus years that followed, it sold an additional 50 million. There's over 70 million copies of that book sold because more and more people. Now, how is it, like, how hard it is to get a book to still be popular almost 100 years later? Like,
there's not a lot of books I've read more than once. Right. Like it's, a lot of books you read them once. Very few books I've read more than twice. I think I've read Think and Grow Rich 3 times, maybe 4.
It's phenomenal. And I'm thinking I need to pick it up again because I'll read quotes and be like, that's good.
It's been 4 or 5 years since I read that book.
Yeah, that's like me with Seasons of Life by Jim Rohn. That's just constantly on my shelf. It's like a proverb for me. I read a proverb every day, pick up Jim Rohn's book every day. So what's the point we're making? Like, people are just starting to tap into mindset. Case in point, we touched on sports science. Well, let's look at sports. In 2007, of elite sport teams, only 15.6 of them, and this is across leagues. This isn't just like baseball, football. All elite level sports in America, all pro sports in America. 15.6% had a sports psychologist. Now, as of the most recent collective bargaining agreement for the NBA and the NFL, they mandated just in those 2 leagues that you have to have a sports psychologist for those 2 leagues.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, like if you think about that now, so what does that tell you? We are like awakening as a human. As
I'm
the
sure
race.
some of that is related to like mental health.
Yeah, for sure.
But on the GM side of it, I'm sure they're looking, like when they're trying to bring a sports psychologist in, they're thinking who are going to help my guys perform.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. We're starting to tap into this. If you watched, I've told you to watch. I doubt you have, but because I know you don't have a ton of time to watch Netflix. But Quarterback, the documentary Quarterback,
I want to
is really good. And Kirk Cousins is on there. If you haven't watched it,
I've seen some clips from it.
He's, first of all, Kirk Cousins is awesome.
Yeah.
I like him even more. He's like a true Bible believing Christian. He's hilarious. Like, seems like just a solid dude. But he sees a sports psychologist, and he does this brain training thing that he does on his phone.
I saw that, yeah.
And this is what I'm saying. Like, this is like, in my opinion, the frontier that is, we're very early on. And there's also much greater, like the ceiling is way further out than there is on physicality.
Yeah, and elite performance is where you really discover the difference makers.
Yes.
The outlier. Like, what's the difference between the guy who's the number one best quarterback in the world and the guy who's 101? There's a huge difference between 101 and number one.
Right. Well, it's so interesting that you bring that up, because in that, they talk so much about the importance of like one play. And, you hear those and you're like, oh, that's so cliche. But you have these guys, they're like, look, we have 56 plays in a game. And if we miss one or two of them, that's a big deal. And it was really interesting.
Like anybody can armchair quarterback. But I think about Tony Romo, like incredible football announcer.
Yes.
Like I remember before when he was still a quarterback for the Cowboys, like, and you would hear him talk, like, dude, this guy knows everything he's so smart. Like, but he could never, for how many years it was like 8 or 9 years that he's with the Cowboys, we didn't get past round one of the playoffs. And he's probably like, could write a book about being a quarterback better than anybody that's played in the last 15 or 20 years. When you listen to him announce, like I love listening when Tony announces, because he literally he's like, he's going to do this and this is going to happen. And you literally watch that play happen. It's like, how did they just line up and you knew what they were going to do?
Yeah.
Right. The guy understood the game, but there's a and again, it's easy for us as non-professional athletes to judge, but I knew that just watching someone like Tony Romo, and I love it because I grew up watching Tiger Woods, who was a mindset giant, right? Had a very different mental approach to the game. I understand the difference between Tony and being, a world-class quarterback is not his ability to throw or run or even his knowledge of the game, but his overall mindset. Because ultimately, when it mattered, Tony would fumble the pass or, throw interceptions.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because he didn't know where the players were going to be.
Oh man, I like Tony Romo a lot, so it's hard to.
I'm not hating on him. I like him a lot too, and this certainly isn't a football podcast, but he's a great example of someone who had great knowledge of the game, but didn't necessarily have the winning mindset.
Well, just to remind you, G, the Cowboys have won only 3 playoff games in the past 25 years, so it wasn't just Tony Romo.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of a damaging stat. Anyways, we have a lot of friends here locally in Dallas that are probably going to punch us for
we got a trend going, and it's not a good one.
No. Yeah, let's break that. Anyways, I'm not a Cowboys fan, so I'm okay with sharing that. All right, let's get into it, G. So, like, mindset.
What is a mindset?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked. It's one of those things that's hiding in plain sight all the time. And I feel like people are like, oh, yeah. Like, we're going to get into some of the misconceptions about what people think.
I think a lot of people can say that a mindset's like, oh, it's just like some thoughts that I have.
Right.
Or it's like, well, like I got a mindset. Like, I'm really into fitness. I got a fitness mindset. It's so much more than that.
Way more than that. So mindset for us is what we said it was like, was that your mindset is your mental posture. To give you like a physical analogy, the same way that you would get into a posture for if you were going to fight or if you were going to relax or if you were getting ready to run, like it determines what you're about to do. Your mindset is your mental posture, right? And there were some definitions that we looked at for
what's interesting is this is mindset's not a word that's in Webster's 1828 dictionary.
Yes.
Right. Mindset didn't even really start showing up until like the early 1900s in psychological literature.
Yeah.
Right? So we looked at some different words, and in this context, we looked at the words mind and set. We looked at thinking. We looked at the mind, and so we kind of formed a definition of what mindset is based upon these two words. Because really, when psychologists started using the word mindset, it was a combination of those two words in their original definition. And the mind is the power that the definition of the mind is the power that conceives, judges, or reasons a thing. And we're going to come back in, we'll jump back into those three things, but remember that conceives, judges, or reasons. And set is really just the state or condition. So think about your mindset as the state or condition of your ability to conceive, judge, or reason. It's the way that you're going to judge what's good or bad in the world. It's the way that you're going to have vision or not have any vision for your life. It's the way that you're going to determine what is right, what is wrong. It's the way that you're going to determine what is successful, what's not successful. And so you have to have a mindset to be able to accomplish things. You have to have a mindset to know right from wrong. You have to have a mindset to be able to believe. You have to have a mindset to be able to endure. Mindset is the preparation, just like Nick's calling it a posture, because that's what it is. Think about, you step into the ring with someone, or probably not in the ring, but maybe on the street with someone, and you'll know really quick whether or not they're a fighter and their posture, right? You look at someone's appearance. You meet someone on the street. You meet someone in a business encounter, and you can tell a lot about them by their posture. Posture is a preparation for what's happening. And so your mindset is a preparation for where you're going. Your mindset is a preparation for what you're going to be able to think and accomplish and do with your life, what you're going to be able to think and accomplish and do in a moment. That's why mindset is so powerful.
Yeah, big time, man. Now, we always like to look at some of the misconceptions around these things because, like we said, this is so much of what we talk about is things that are hiding in plain sight, right? It's common everyday things that we think we understand, but we don't really spend the time to dive deeper into it, which is what we like to do on this podcast.
We've shut it down before, or at least given our opinion on it, but I think like a common mindset of our generation, and maybe I guess of our generation, I would just say the millennial generation. And I'm not throwing shots at Gen Z, but I don't think this is a Gen Z. This is a Gen Z issue, but like so many of the millennial generation, people of success, people of means or whatever, kind of have this like grind mentality. Yeah. And we got into that on winning philosophy. And that's a mindset of just like, oh, I just work hard. Like I'm a grind all day. I'm gonna be 14 hours a day. I'm gonna make sales calls, chugging Rockstar energy drinks. Like I'm just gonna grind. That people think that's a mindset.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, you have those people that wear like beast mode shirts, and suddenly they're like, "Dude, my mentality's like rock solid." And it's like,
I started thinking about like affliction tees.
Oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it?
It was such a thing.
You just go out and you buy the affliction tee, and now it's like, oh, that guy's about it. Like he must spend hours in the gym. Have you ever been to UFC gym? No, bro. I just like the shirt. Oh, okay, cool. Well, guess hopefully you got a free mindset packed in with that. But that truthfully is it. And the other thing is people think like that this is something they can just switch on. Like, hey, I got myself up this morning, Garrett. I looked in the mirror and I said a bunch of really powerful things. I've done this. Okay, so I'm not like if you're like, oh, I do that. I did this as well.
We're not taking shots at you. We're saying these are like grind, like that thought process of I'm going to work really hard to make things happen. That's a piece of a mindset. It's not the whole mindset. Nick's saying he does his affirmations in the morning, and that's true. That's a part of building a mindset. It's not the whole mindset. Alex Hormozy says confidence does not come from shouting affirmations in the mirror. Yeah. Right. And that can be a misconception of a mindset. Like, man, I just gotta say it. If I just think it enough, right, then it'll become true. And I think that kind of alludes to one of the biggest mindset misconceptions, which I would call just believe. Right. Like this also, and I won't get deep into this, but this also bleeds into like the faith perspective, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people think like, if I just believe more, and there's the whole, belief and way of thinking along with manifestation of just think about it more often and it's going to happen, right? If I just believe that this is going to happen, it's going to happen to me. And people can, and just on the faith perspective, when you're early on in your walk, your faith journey with God, when you're early on in this, you can have this way of thinking that are like, man, if I just, it'll happen for me if I just have more faith, mm-hmm. right? It didn't happen because I didn't believe it, right? And that is an immature way of thinking, right? Like just because you believe it doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's also God's sovereignty and his control in a specific situation, right? Faith is so much more than that. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that this like whole just believe thought process, that's also a misconception of a mindset.
Yeah. What we're saying is that a mindset is developed. Like if you could just shout in the mirror, and this, like if you do shout affirmations at yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is your be all and end all for like, hey, I did that this morning, now I've got a killer mindset, that's going to fall down and you're going to be left trying to pick up some pieces and wondering what happened. So what we're saying is that this is not like you don't flip a switch, and you also don't have one mindset. You don't just have beast mode on everything. We're going to get into that, like that there's a lot of different things.
All of those things, those misconceptions we talked about are parts of our mindset. The just believe, it's like faith. It's part of a mindset. But it's not just that. Exactly. Don't just believe. You got to have the other stuff that goes with it. Right?
So, okay, G, so let's talk about this then. So the power of a mindset. I mean, obviously you're a Navy SEAL. You guys know a thing or two about mindsets. It is literally the difference between
like it's. And I'm not the only one that says this. I'm a clanging cymbal when it comes to this. But you'll hear so many other SEALs. Anyone who talks about helping students prepare or looks backwards at the training program, you will hear other SEALs talk about that mindset is everything. Right, especially as it relates to SEAL training, right? Like you can be a great athlete, you can do lots of running, lots of swimming prep, all of that stuff, but that only works to a point, right? If you're not physically prepared, well, you're not going to be capable. You could have the right mindset and not be able to make it through training, but physical preparation only leads to a point. Like, and I discovered this for myself, where I was barely over the line of physical preparation, but I had the right mindset to make it through training. And I remember students in my class who like didn't really have they had certain pieces of a great mindset, and gosh, they were physically prepared. I mean, there were some amazing athletes in my class. I still look back at some of the people I met in my class, and I'm like, man, those people weren't pro athletes, but I've met some pro athletes, and I've never met anybody like these people.
Wow.
Like their level of athletic preparation and physical preparation was insane. I knew a guy. This guy actually made it into the SEAL teams, but this guy was like Herschel Walker. I mean, he had done like thousands of push-ups every day. He could do hundreds of push-ups at one time. I met so many people like that, and he was the exception. A lot of the guys who that had been their physical preparation didn't make it through because they had relied on that, but they didn't have the mindset, literally the mental preparation, the way of thinking that it affects their reasoning, that affects their ability to conceive thoughts, to conceive possibility, the things that affect their judgment, and to maintain that state during difficult circumstances. All of these pieces of their mindset, they were missing those things. So their physical preparation could not get them over that line, because there's so many journeys in life that are not just a physical journey, but they're a mental journey.
Yeah. Now, just in case you missed it, because I want you guys to get the most out of this episode that you can. Garrett touched on it again with conceives, judges, or reasons. We're going to refer back to that, and you'll be like, okay, guys, we get it. You like to define words. Why do we do that? Because when you know what something means, you can go a lot deeper and really extrapolate all the meaning. We're a squeeze the juice or squeeze the lemon type of people here. We want to get everything we can out of this. So if you're ever wondering why we do that, it's because you can gloss over, or if you give words the wrong meaning.
When you know the definition of a word, then you give the word power.
Exactly.
Right? Think about words that you don't know the meaning to. A lot of people, the only thing that money means to them is the ability to spend.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't have very much, right? When you speak the language of money, when you understand the meaning of money, that's when you can make more money.
Yeah.
When you understand the meaning of mindset and you really understand all the pieces that we're going to get into, that's when you can build an incredible one instead of just have a default mindset.
And you're going to see that when you have a elite mindset, it is literally the greatest tool, because it really is your ability to go into any situation and assess it and overcome it. So one of the most popular mindsets of recent time, and once again, G, you can buy the t-shirt, you can get the shoes. I would put him second only to Jordan. Kobe Bryant, right? The Mamba mentality became a thing. And so we were looking at some of the stuff that was out there.
What's cool about Kobe compared to Jordan is Kobe externalized a lot more of his way of thinking and stuff like what we're going to get into here, where Jordan, like, you just had to observe Jordan and watch Jordan and get his story, but he didn't say as much.
Well, that's because in the 90s, nobody had smartphones. Like, seriously, I mean, I think that made such a big difference.
But even in interviews, like, it came out more from Kobe in interviews. But
that's true.
Tell us about the Mamba mindset.
Okay, so the Mamba mentality, and Mamba mindset, you can buy the t-shirt, like I said. He's even written a book, right, that you can read. So here's where it really hit. Kobe was 35. He blows out his Achilles, right? And when it happened, he goes down, and he knew straight away. He gets up.
Do you know how many championships they'd won at that point when he's 35?
I don't. I know he finished with 5, but I don't know how many he'd won at that point. I do know that he scored like 80 plus points his last game, which is, I love that he went out like, oh, I'm about to retire. Boom. There you go. Anyways, so he's 35. He's just blown out his Achilles. He gets up, hits his free throws, and then walks off the court.
At 35, and that's time in the NBA. He was the number one player in the NBA.
Yeah, but he was, I would say LeBron is, anyways, I don't want to get into the overall context. He's still like a top player, but he's not like Kobe when he's like 28 and unguardable. I mean, he was ridiculous. Anyways, so he goes onto Facebook to rant at 3:30 in the morning, and this is what he says. And this is
right after his injury.
This is right after his injury. He hasn't even had the surgery yet. So this is the night that it happens. And he comes in, and here's where he goes. Maybe I should break out the rocking chair and reminisce on the career that was. Maybe this is how my book ends. Maybe Father Time has defeated me. This is after he's already talked about how he's feeling sorry for himself. He goes, then again, maybe not. It's 3:30 a.m. My foot feels like dead weight. My head is spinning from the pain meds, and I'm wide awake. Forgive my venting, but what's the purpose of social media if I won't bring it to you real? Feels good to vent. Let it out. To feel as if this is the worst thing ever. Because after all the venting, a real perspective sets in. There are far greater issues and challenges in the world than a torn Achilles. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Find the silver lining and get to work with the same belief, same drive, and same conviction as ever. One day, the beginning of a new career journey will commence. Today is not that day. If you see me in a fight with a bear, pray for the bear. I've always loved that quote. That's Mamba mentality. We don't quit. We don't cower. We don't run. We endure and conquer. And then he talks about it's a long post, and it was Facebook venting, but he just said, I'm going to have faith in my teammates. I'm going to coach them, and I will be back. I just loved how you always go, Mamba out. That's how he signed off.
I first heard that in an interview of someone reading it, and they're reading it back to Kobe.
Yeah.
I think it's shortly after when his recovery. I think it's the next year after his recovery, and they're reading that back to him, and you can see it on his face as they're reading the first part of the post, and then you can see the change in the look on his face when he shifts, right?
Yeah.
And Kobe had a mindset to be able to shift himself.
Yes.
Even in that moment, it's 3:30 in the morning. He's angry. He's like, I'm the best player in the world. I've done this move millions and millions of times, and I don't know why, but for some reason my Achilles tore when I took this step. And, he could talk about, I don't deserve it. It's not fair. I might as well quit. And he lays all that out there. He's like, I could do these things, but here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right. And he displays his mindset, his ability to shift himself
Yes.
from a frustrating circumstance, from a difficult circumstance, from what could be a very losing situation, and says, I'm going to come back greater than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And that is a choice that he took to shift the way that he felt about a situation. And that is the power of a mindset.
Yeah, no, I love that. Now, G, I thought one of the best examples that you gave when we were talking about this came from your beloved Matrix franchise.
I quote or I talk about the first Matrix all the time. It's head and shoulders better than the second and third one. I enjoy the second and third one as action movies. Does not have all of the philosophical meaning that the first one does. Yeah. However, there are still some really cool moments in the second and third one. In the third Matrix, there's a man called the Keymaster, and I was telling Nick, I said, this is really what it's like to have a great ability, not to just to have a Mamba mindset, but to understand what a mindset is and to be able to craft your mindset. There's this guy, the Keymaster, he can open all the doors in the Matrix. Right. And he has this like massive key belt of like hundreds, thousands of keys. Everywhere he's running, you just hear the jingling of all these keys, and you see him open keys to all these doors throughout the movie. And there's one point in the movie where he comes to a door that he doesn't have a key to, and he just quickly pulls out a file and makes the key and opens the door. Right. And so I was telling Nick, I said, that's what it's like when you know how to build a mindset. Right. When you have a mindset, you have the key to open a door. Right. Like Kobe had the key to open the door to his difficult situation. If with the wrong mindset, he would have been locked out of his future. Right. But when you know how to craft a mindset, even when you don't have the key for it, you can be like the key master. You can look down at the keyhole and be someone who understands mindset. Oh, I know how to move the pins for this lock, craft the key and open the door.
To keep on that thought process, because I think mindset can still feel mysterious. One of the things that showed that Kobe had such a great mindset is that even after basketball, so many players, they retire and they don't really know what to do with themselves. He retired from basketball, and then I think he won a Grammy. It was either a Grammy or an Emmy for a movie he made. He started his own production company, like wrote children's books, and did all sorts of things, and was full on accelerating in his second life, like what would be a second career, and accelerating at like a very relevant pace. Like it wasn't like people were like, oh, this is the basketball player, let's humor him. He was doing, like, he invented his own word as the name of his studios. Just really showed that he truly had a mindset that he could build. Okay, Mamba doesn't work here. I mean, you can listen to him talk about how he used his EQ and his emotional intelligence. Like, Mamba's not going to work here to just come in, because now it's not just him. He's got to learn a whole new environment. He's got to work with people. And that's what you're saying. He couldn't just use the Mamba key in his second life. He had to go in and craft a new mindset to still find success, but to look at some of the different tools that were needed. And this is what we're saying to you. We're going to go through it. 11.
I don't want to be a one-hit wonder in my life.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be someone who just did one thing, who just had one mindset. But when you know how to craft mindsets, that's when you can make the key that you need to unlock any door. Just quick on that before we get into the other elements of a mindset. I don't know if you've seen this, but just other great basketball players winning in other areas. Steph Curry, I don't know if you've seen him playing golf lately. Scored a hole-in-one, doing all these other, could probably be on tour as a golfer, and he's a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
Those things should not correlate but he's just incredibly talented. And I'm sure he applies the same mindset to being such a great shooter that he is in basketball. I mean, that's a precision thing to be able to just nail bucket after bucket after bucket. So honestly, when you look at who he is as a basketball player, it doesn't surprise me that he can strike a golf ball so well.
And he's an interesting, I think somebody was telling me that it's on Apple TV. They have a documentary on him now. And he's an interesting study because he was a guy that should have never even, he barely made it to college. Yeah. And then let alone the NBA to now be the greatest shooter ever and have won multiple MVP.
He has the highest accuracy. I'm not surprised.
He has the most three-point field goals of anybody in the history of the NBA. And
he's changed basketball because now you got all these high school kids pulling up at the half-court line.
Dude,
and making them.
Yeah, breakaway threes was like something I never wanted to see. I just wanted to see slam dunks, man. I grew up playing NBA Jam, but now it's like a thing. So anyway.
So let's get into the pieces of a mindset.
This is not an exhaustive list, but we're going to go through quite a few things.
It's not an exhaustive list, but I would tell you these are some of the core elements that develop a mindset. And I'll just say all these elements influence each other.
Correct.
There's not like a chicken or an egg situation, like which one comes first. These are all of the pieces that impact your mindset. So the first one that we're going to talk about is focus, right? And I want to talk and think about focus as a skill, not focus as, you can have a focus. Like I'm focused on improving this. I'm focused on, saving money every month. Like that's the focus as an objective, right? Think about focus as a skill, focus as a skill is your ability to ignore things that don't matter, right? Your ability to eliminate things that don't matter. It's a huge part of a mindset, right? Sometimes the things that don't matter are things that you would say, no, this really matters, right? But in certain situations, you can say, no, it doesn't matter right now, right? The same way that Kobe could say, like, you know what, this pain doesn't matter, right? In that game where he tore his Achilles, he still made free throws.
Yeah,
he's still like after he tore his Achilles, which if you've torn your Achilles, you would know like that's an incredibly painful and debilitating injury, right? But he ignored it. He said that this is not what I need to focus on right now. I think about being on the battlefield where you can have all kinds of stuff going on, including fear for your life. You've got explosions. You've got all kinds of noise and chaos, and you have to have the ability to focus on the things that really matter for that moment, right? Like, sure, my life matters. Sure, all these things going around me, they matter, but not in the context of what I need to accomplish right now. I have to have the right mindset where I'm focusing on specific things, focusing on the things that I need to accomplish in this moment to be able to meet my objective. Otherwise, if I don't have this skill, the ability to eliminate things that don't matter and determine what matters, if I'm just like the only things that have my attention are the things that are being thrown at me, the only things that have my attention are the things that are the loudest, like think about being able to hear a whisper in the middle of a live concert, right? That's what focus is like, right? And so when you have that skill, this is an incredible piece of a mindset. It's not, you've got to have more than focus for a mindset, but focus is one of these special skills that you have to build a great mindset.
Very good. Yeah. Now, the next one that we wanted to look at was belief. And belief, if you remember, like we've talked about this, we've got episode 3, which is on core beliefs, but beliefs are things that you know to be true.
But by the way, we have an episode for all of these. I just wanted to mention it real quick before we move on.
Yeah.
Episode 17 is an episode on focus, right?
And once again, you can go to the website, theimpossible.life/podcast, and search all these by keyword, which is what we did.
But all these elements we're talking about, we've done an episode on them before, but all of these elements build your mindset. And what we're talking about today is the power of a mindset.
Yeah, like we said, this whole podcast is about mindset. Never once do we come in and go, hey, gee, let's just talk about something that doesn't have to do with what goes on.
This is an opportunity. We zoom in here a lot, and this is an opportunity to zoom out and put all the pieces together.
Yeah. So going back to belief. So remember, belief are things that you believe to be true but can't prove in a scientific sense, right? And so I want to make sure I put a little asterisk there. We're talking about scientifically. And if you know about the scientific process, you'll understand why we say scientifically. But I'm not going to go deep into that. What
Go to episode 3.
Go to episode 3. What belief will do, and we've talked about belief a lot, but what belief will do, it will help you to push beyond reason to conceive. Like we talked about earlier about what your mind does. It's the power to conceive, judge, or reason. This, like when you have belief, you'll push beyond reason. Example, Roger Bannister, right? First guy to ever run a 4-minute mile. They said it was impossible. He believed it to be true that he could do it. And he pushed beyond reason. He pushed beyond what everybody was telling him. And he actually went out and did it. And then after him, 37 people did it in the first year after he did it. Gee, why? Because suddenly belief reset their mindset of what was possible. And were those guys suddenly in that much better shape? No. Like, there's no way that they're like, oh, well, now he had what people want is they want the special trick. Just tell me like what exercise you did to make you run faster.
You can look at the people that were next to Roger and they had mindsets of elite runners.
Right.
They didn't have mindsets of being a barrier breaker.
Right.
Roger had the mindset of being a barrier breaker, and that's why he could look at something that everyone else's reasoning and judgment, they said you can't do it. He was able, because of a belief that he had, he was able to conceive something, to see something that other people don't see, to see a world that's possible where other people see impossible. That's the power of belief and core beliefs that you have, especially when you think that you're put on the earth to do something in the same way that Roger was. So that's the difference between the mindsets that they had. And when that mindset was no longer like the barrier breaker mindset, right? He broke the barrier for them so they could use their elite runner mindset to run just as fast as he had.
And but it is crazy though, because most people would be searching for what they're missing physically in that case.
It's kind of like just going back to Tony Romo for a second. He has the mindset of an elite quarterback, but there's a difference between the mindset of an elite quarterback and the mindset of a winner.
That's interesting. Yeah, very good. Shout out to Tony Romo. Anyways,
I have so much respect for Tony.
I do too, man.
Not hate.
Next up was purpose, G, and we've covered purpose a lot. The Joe Musselman episode, which was episode 67, was awesome. We did another follow-up on it on 68 just to talk about how to not find your purpose and how to actually find it. So you can do your research.
But let me connect purpose to mindset for us for a second. So we all have a unique purpose. Every single person has their own unique purpose, where we have some shared purpose, and it's great to have, unique shared purpose with other people. Each of us was put on the earth for a specific purpose that is no one else's. Right. And I'm not trying to have Nick's purpose. Nick's not trying to have my purpose. Nick has told other guys before, like, there's things that you should learn from Garrett, but don't try to be like him.
Yeah.
Right. And the same for all of us. Right. Like, learn from people that you want to learn from people you respect, learn from people you admire, but you're not trying to make their purpose your purpose. It's the same thing with a mindset. Right. You can look at elite people and you can take pieces of their mindset. You can try to understand how they built it. And that's really what we want you to take away from this. Right. Like the Mamba mindset was for Kobe. Right. And you can learn some things from that. But I can't just step into Kobe's shoes. I can buy some at the store, but that doesn't mean I can play like him.
Yeah.
I can read his stuff, but that doesn't mean I have the Mamba mindset. I have to develop my own mindset. Right. Just like we all have our own unique purpose. And so I want to connect purpose in that way. Purpose answers, and I want you to understand how purpose and mindset really go together. The same way that we have our own unique purpose, we need to have our own unique mindset. Your unique mindset will align you to your unique purpose, right? Like Kobe walked in his purpose with his unique elite mindset to walk into a unique and elite future, right? Not everyone's going to be famous, and you shouldn't want to be famous, right? What you should want to do is accomplish everything that you were created to do. What you should want to do is live up to your purpose. And to do that, you're going to have to build the mindset that pairs with it. Purpose answers the question, what am I supposed to do? Like, that's the question that people are asking all the time. What am I supposed to do? Purpose answers that question. Mindset is a statement. So purpose says, what am I supposed to do? Mindset is a statement that says, here's what I can do, right? So you can see how they connect. Like, to me, I look at them like two pieces of Velcro. Like you got hook and loop, as they call it in the military, and purpose is hook and mindset is loop. And you got to match those two together, right? You have to have the right mindset to get to your purpose. And also, we have different, I'm talking about like greater purpose in life, but you also can have like a contextual purpose, right? Or also a mission. Like, what is it that I want to accomplish, right? And you'll have a different mindset dependent on a different purpose, right? Like, I have a mindset for my entire life, but I also have like a different mindset in business, as I have a different mindset with my family, as I have a different mindset in men's ministry, right? It impacts the decisions that I make, the ways that I think, the way that I feel and see certain situations. So your purpose in a moment and your purpose in your life has to pair with a specific mindset.
Yeah, that's so good, man. I feel like we could just press stop there. But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
So up next, it was awareness, right, G? That was the next thing that we were looking at.
Yeah, so what is awareness? And again, these are all pieces of a mindset. They influence each other. They play off of each other, and you want all of them. When you have all of these core elements, that's when you can build a successful mindset. Awareness. Awareness affects mindset in a slightly different way. What is awareness? Also, we have an episode on that, episode number 12. Awareness is the ability to gather data and determine relevancy. Like, I think about awareness on the battlefield, right? Like I had to be able to, they called it, this is like basic Army awareness, 5s and 25s. What's 5 feet in front of me? What's 25 feet in front of me? Also, what's relevant, right? Like I don't need to be like, ooh, look at all the ants, right? Like not relevant to battlefield awareness, right? So awareness is your ability to gather data and determine relevancy. In the context of your purpose, in the context of your mission, it's understanding, okay, what battlefield am I on right now?
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Like I love the John Eldridge quote, until you see your life in the context of war, you'll misinterpret 90% of what happens to you. That's alluding more to the spiritual warfare of life. But also, if you'll see life in the context of battle, like I have a specific mission, there's things that are trying to stop me, there's things that I need to navigate, I need to stay on time, on track to accomplish my objective, right? So what battlefield am I on? Right, that's awareness. Right. Like if you walk in the door from your business meeting with one mindset, and you give that and you give all of that energy, you give that way of thinking, you give that mindset to your children, you're going to get a bad outcome.
Yeah, big time.
Right. In the same way, like I don't want to have my family reunion outcome on the battlefield. Right. I need to be thinking and acting in a different way. So awareness allows me to say, okay, what battlefield am I on? And then awareness takes me to, okay, now what's happening on my battlefield? So what awareness is going to allow you to do is assist you in when to shift into what mindset.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the parenting example you gave is a great one, and it's like what we didn't really plan to talk about Kobe so much, but I feel like we keep referencing back to it. That's why I was saying when he went on and became successful in other ventures afterwards, it wasn't because he just kept forcing the Mamba mentality into that role. He realized that he had to, his awareness told him, okay, this isn't going to work here. I need to develop a new mindset. I need to put on a different hat, and he did. So I mean, I just think it's reinforcing that one. Up next, G, was standards.
Next is standards. Yeah, that's episode 30. Like I said, we have an episode for all these. I would encourage you to go back and listen to them. Right now, we're just talking about all of the pieces of a mindset and really trying to help you this isn't meant to complicate a mindset. Right. This is really meant to simplify a mindset for you, where you'll realize okay, why have my mindsets failed in the past? Right. Like maybe you're really good at one of these things. Right. But you'll realize if you're short in one of these areas, it can impact your mindset.
Yeah. And remember, you have to develop these. Like we said, you can't just shout in the mirror. If you could just shout standards in the mirror.
Standards.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing? Like, I am excellent. Oh, okay, cool. Well, it's going to take a little bit more time.
I'm aware.
Exactly. That would be amazing if you could do that. You know? We could just have a podcast where we just shout those things, people repeat it, and off you go. Incredible. But you have to develop it.
So the next piece, standards. And what is standards? We talked about in mindset, there's these 3 different lanes that you're in, the ability to conceive, the ability to see something right before, or to make something happen, the ability to judge, which is right or wrong, good versus bad, and then reason. Right, that's effectiveness. Like that's logic. Like the math equation works or the math equation doesn't work. What standards allow us to do is that when we have standards, it saves mental energy for us because we're not having to judge things as good or bad. Yeah. Right. We've predetermined. We've made non-decisions that look. This is how I do. This is my standard for how I keep my weapon. Yep. This is the standard for my appearance. This is the standard for my diet, for my nutrition, whatever it is. This is the standard. This is try some standards out in this way. This is the standards for my communication. This is the standards for my vocabulary. Like I don't use certain words. This is the standard for how I control my emotions. I will do these things, right? It's not like, oh, well, when we fly out, I'll see how I feel about it if I want to carry 6 mags or 8 mags that day. Right. Well, when we come back from the op, I'll see how I feel about it if I want to clean my gun or not. Right. You have standards in place that say, no, this is what I do. Yeah. Right. And what those things do is they save you the mental energy of having to have a conversation about certain things with yourself of well, is this a good thing or a bad thing? No, I've already decided.
Yeah. And you called those non-decisions, which I think is a great term. And if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it because Garrett ruined sweatpants for me on that episode.
To me, it was one of many takeaways that any of you who've been in the military, you understand it. They hit on professionalism, right? Like especially uniform professionalism, even more so when you're in your dress uniform. Like it'll be perfect, right? There will not be like a stray piece of linen or like anything on your uniform that's not supposed to be there. You will maintain a professional appearance. You'll maintain a professional haircut. Nobody likes the haircut and beard grooming standards, especially in the special operations community, but they're very clear on what the standards are. They're very clear on you will represent us correctly. And so like I have standards for my own professional appearance, right? Because I have an idea of an ideal self. This is who I want to be. This is how I want people to see me. Am I presenting myself in that way?
Yeah.
Right. I want to be a great operator on the battlefield. Does the cleanliness of my weapon represent that?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what a standard does.
Yeah. The ideal, what you just touched on, the ideal self is so powerful. I developed this after that episode, and that's where your standards will come from, is because you'll have a clear vision for what you could be. And it's a lot harder to break the standards when you actually have a clear vision of what you could be, because you're literally subscribing to being inferior to what you could be every time you're like, oh, I'm just going to break this standard. So instead, make a bunch of non-decisions. As a result, I only wear sweatpants at home when I'm just with my family. So thanks a lot, Carrie.
Kobe had an ideal self of being a champion.
Yeah, big time.
And so what comes along with, there's a difference between being an NBA player and being a champion. And so along with that standard, which means something very different, just like the standard between being a pro player and being a winner, what Kobe said is, look, I'm never going to feel sorry for myself. Yeah. I'm never going to allow excuses. I'll always be the first one to practice. I will outwork, and that's not the only thing I'm going to do, but I will outwork, I will outpractice, I will do everything within my power, and I'll be constantly searching for new things that I can do to grow and better myself.
Yeah.
Right? That's the power of standards.
Yeah. And like we said, there's a lot of things that are tied together. So not so coincidentally, up next was discipline.
Right after
right after standards. And when you talk about adhering to things with non-decisions, discipline, we define that as the ability to maintain adherence to mental elements. Discipline comes up a lot. We did Garrett's 21 discipline tools on episode 33. And like we talked about, what I just ran you through when I was talking about ideal self and standards, I mean, discipline is really the adherence to that, right? And that's what you were saying about the mental elements.
All these things we've been talking about, standards, awareness, right? Mm-hmm. These are some of the mental elements, all the stuff we've listed so far. Discipline is your ability. It's a strength that you have. If you either have good discipline or you don't. And if you have good discipline, it's because you've built it, right? Like the first time you go to the gym, you're like, I can't lift weights. I don't know how to lift weights, because you've never done it before, right? The more you lift weights, the more you learn how to do it, the more you build strength in doing it, because you're getting stronger and learning how to do it. Those begin to multiply. Like your discipline grows over time.
Right.
Discipline is your ability to maintain adherence to these elements, right? The ability to maintain adherence to your standards. I don't have to think about it, but I still have to willpower, and I have to have discipline to do it. Right? I know what awareness is, but it still takes discipline and mental energy to stay aware. Discipline is the ability to maintain adherence to these certain elements of your mindset. But I think a lot of people, this can be the grind one. A lot of people think like, man, if I can just have a disciplined mindset. Well, discipline is an important part of any mindset that you want to have, right? Like I actually have a very disciplined mindset in my mindset with my family and with my children. And you think like, what do you like do push-ups with your children every night? Well, when they're older, I will, but it's more so about, not old enough for that yet, soon, but it's more so about my discipline and my behavior,
right?
My discipline and my awareness to where they're at emotionally, to how I can have more relationship with them. Like I'm not going to miss opportunities.
Right.
I want to make sure that I use every opportunity to teach them, and I'm going to be very disciplined in making sure that I don't give them a bad example.
Right. Now, I feel like the discipline element of this can almost be, it can come like the hard work thing where it's just like,
it can be grind. Yeah, this can be the grind
this can
mindset.
Be the grind. Like you can be that
and
one.
You can have there's a lot of people think like, I just got to have a disciplined mindset. I remember this guy in my buds class. I'll never forget this guy. In my mind, this guy was a robot. Like I met a lot of people early on in SEAL training. They're like, dude, this guy's different, right? Like that guy's a physical specimen. That is, this dude is weird. This guy is extremely disciplined.
Right.
Like this guy was just completely robotic in everything. Like it just seemed like he had no emotions, and everything we had to do, like he would spend all of his time on the weekend, like literally all of his time, cleaning his boots, polishing his helmet. It's like he just gave all of his time to it. Whereas most people are like, okay, well, I think this will pass. I'm going to try to do good. But he was just extremely disciplined in everything. And then even in in our after hours, like with his nutrition and his stretching and everything, this dude was just insanely dedicated, right? But this guy didn't make it through buds.
Right.
I remember when he quit, and it blew me away. And looking back on the situation, I can see what happened. It was a brutal day on the beach where they were just trashing everybody. And I know what happened to him was they broke down his mindset. They were we do some of these. There's an evolution called base tour, and there's another evolution where we go up and down the beach, and they're just going to make everyone weak. And what the instructor, like, no one's looking strong that day, but what the instructors will do is they'll start to single out people in a boat crew, right? There's 6 guys under a boat and no one's having a good time, but they'll start to pick on one guy, right? And they'll start calling him out. They'll start saying that he looks weak. Everyone is so like destroyed. You can't judge what state other people are in, but they're calling his name out. Right. And so what he's thinking about is what his boat crew is thinking about him. Right. And what'll happen to students is they begin to tell themselves like, yeah, my team doesn't want me here, because the instructors will say that, like, you're weak. Your team doesn't want you here. You're holding them back. Right. And people just quit in that moment. And he quit in a very similar fashion. You have other people who, when that's happening, they're either going to say, well, either it's not true, but if it is true, I'm just going to push harder because I'm not weak. Right. And so he had great discipline, but when his belief and who he was, his belief, like, he actually was capable, but his belief broke down. Man. Right. And so he didn't have mindset is everything in SEAL training.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. So his mindset broke down. He was extremely disciplined, one of the most disciplined people I'd ever seen. But he didn't have everything. He was missing certain elements, especially in that context, belief, to be able to accomplish his objective.
Man, that's such a good example. I just picture like robot tadpole, like walking around. Now, you talked about belief. One of the things that you wouldn't really think would come in here is pain and fear, right? And these are like the inhibitors. These are the things that you will lose your mindset to, right? Things that will halt your growth. And we did an episode on that. It's episode 4. First time I ever entered an ice bath was recorded live. And you can go back and listen to my shame and pain and see what my relationship with pain was like back then. But this is, my relationship with pain is on record now. But lots of people's relationship with pain is just as bad or worse than mine is. And they're letting it stop themselves. They're letting it shape their mindset and basically keeping them small.
Yeah, and I think some pain in the moment, it's like, you know what, if you have to go through something really horrible, like you see in old Revolutionary War movies, like a guy getting his leg cut off.
Oh, man.
Is there like a right mindset for that? Yeah, I mean, there's a mindset that's better than others.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But there's not really a mindset that's going to make that pain go away. Right. Your first time in the ice bath, there's better mindsets than others, but really the wrong is, like, if you'd had the wrong mindset about pain, you would have never got in there again.
Right.
The right mindset with pain was, you said that I can be better on the other side of this. Right. And so when you have the wrong relationship with pain and fear, and what pain and fear as an element will do to your mindset, is it's when you have a good mindset and pain or fear shuts it down. Right. Like, oh man, I want to be successful, but I experienced the fear of loss. I experienced the fear of failure. I experienced the fear of it not working out, losing my reputation, losing my status, whatever your fear is. And then you no longer have this mindset of like, oh, I'm gonna be a great entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah. And that's probably the kindest you've ever been about my first ice bath. So, I don't know what's happening here, but I appreciate it. I didn't really know how to respond to that. So up next is one that we love, episode 40, principles, right?
Did we,
we talked about episode.
No. I don't think we hit the discipline episode or the pain and fear episode. Discipline episode number 33 and pain and fear episode number 4.
We talked about it.
Okay, I guess I missed it.
I'm glad that you reiterated it though. Principles was episode 40, G, just to make sure we covered it up front. Do you want to go ahead and give people a little bit of insight?
Yeah, principles, man. We just spent a whole month talking about principles, and I love that. I enjoy getting to explore and go into a deep dive into a topic like we did for a whole month with the group in Mindset Mastery. Because really what this is about, like when you spend that long on a topic, you're learning what I learned in the military about how to be great at something, right? Like I can take someone in one day on the range and I can get them to look really cool, right? I can get you to operate correctly, do certain things, and look like you know what you're doing, but I 100% know you would break down in battle. And so like you can do that with someone on the range, right? I can manipulate you and show you the right things and just say, hey, do this in this context, right? Just look at me and do what I do, right? And then that they can re-perform what I showed them. What's different is the way that they train you in SEAL training is they make you do something millions of times in all types of different situations, right? When you first learn basic rules of firearms safety, and firearms manipulation to handling malfunctions and reloads and stuff like that, you learn that on the island, which is the last 2 weeks, or the last 4 weeks. 2 weeks of that is shooting. The last 4 weeks of SEAL training And if you make any mistake, like you break what you don't do exactly what they told you to do, it's like a quarter-mile run down to the surf and back, right? Like you are paying attention, you're going to do exactly what is taught to you. And I've worked with like professional marksmen who can shoot way better than me, but I'm a better combat shooter than them,
right?
Because I see where they only know how to do things in a certain context versus handling malfunctions and their mindset towards a weapon. And so I say all of that to say the reason to get really deep into a topic, and I told Nick this when we were talking about principles last month for Mindset Mastery, is that I don't want to give people a fish.
Right.
That's what people want. Tell me what to do, right? Like people want to tell me how to shoot like a Navy SEAL. You want to shoot like a Navy SEAL? Shoot millions of rounds. Right? Spend all of your time practicing the basics. Shoot 90% of your time training, practice the same fundamental drills. And then you can spend 10% of your time on unique, specific, difficult, obscure exercises.
Right.
But people don't want to do that. And so what I'm trying to accomplish with the way that we're teaching principles is teach people how to fish, is teach people how to build a mindset, not just what a great mindset is. 'Cause everybody wants the Mamba mindset, but they don't know what it takes to build one.
Right. Very good.
So principles are universal things. Principles is understanding the way the world works. It's when you can see principles, when you are so wise, right? You can look at a situation. It's like Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven is like this, and he would tell a story. When you can see principles, you understand this is the way the world works, and everything else works like it. Principles is so powerful. Principles is one of these core ones that like you can be really disciplined. You can have a lot of core beliefs. Right? You can have a lot of stuff figured out, but if you don't understand the principles of becoming a great athlete, it'll never work for you. Right? Like, man, you can be so disciplined in doing the wrong thing. You can 100% believe that you got it all figured out. But if you don't understand the principles of the domain that you're in, you'll never be successful. Right? You can plant seed every day in the wrong season.
Yeah.
Right? You can plant pumpkin seeds all month, the whole month in January. Right? They're not going to grow.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to germinate correctly. You have to understand principles. You have to understand the way that things work. That's the power of principles, and it's a big piece of your mindset.
Yep. It helps you see the effectiveness of what you're doing. We've only got a couple more, G. We've got two more. The second to last one is one of your favorites. It's perspective. That was our Jordan episode, 23, if anybody's looking. And
we're about to spend a whole nother month talking about perspective. This is one of my favorites. My life has been shaped greatly by perspective, and I think I've looked at other people's lives who were great, and I've been shaped by them, and I've seen how they had a different perspective.
Yeah.
Perspective is just one way of saying it, and in the context of the three things that your mindset will do for you: conceive, judge, or reason. Perspective is in the realm of conceive. What perspective will do for you, it's the ability to see possible or see impossible in a certain situation. When you have the wrong perspective, right, you'll say like, man, it can't be done. I can never recover from this injury. There's no way I could be successful. There's no way my marriage will last.
Yeah.
Right? That's a wrong perspective, right? Or you can have the perspective where Kobe said, despite this injury and these difficult circumstances, he even says it in his, if you go back and or listen to or read, you can look it up, what he said in that post. He talks about, but then my perspective shift. I thought about somebody else's pain way worse than mine. I reset how I felt about my situation, and I changed my actions, right? Perspective allows you, we're going to spend a whole month talking about perspective and teaching people how to really use perspective to get what you want out of life. But perspective allows you to see the right things to move you towards your objective instead of focus on the wrong things.
So good, G. So very last one, G.
One of, just real quick before we get into the last one, my, great example of perspective in my own life was Sir Edmund Hillary.
Yeah.
Right. Sir Edmund, I thought like, man, SEAL train, like people would, when I would tell them what I'm doing, the first thing they'd say to me is like, well, doesn't that have like a really high dropout rate? Right. And so it'd be really easy to look at your situation, be like, yeah, it does. So I'm just going to apply myself, apply the value of me as a 1 against the percentage of what the likelihood of achievement for that is. And that's my lot in life. Like that's the way most people would look at it.
Yeah.
I think about Sir Edmund Hillary, right? He was someone who inspired me very much when I was young, setting out to climb Everest and doesn't even know if it can be done.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's literally seeking out, they did not know, like they didn't understand the physiological science back then. You might just die, right? Like the human body it's like the human body can't survive in outer space. And they didn't know if the human body could survive at the top of Everest.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, plenty of people had died, so they
yeah, a lot of people have died.
That they could.
There was a lot of evidence leading to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't know if it could be done. And so I looked at that. I'm like, man, in the same way that Kobe looked at, I got a torn Achilles, but there's other people out there hurting way, way more in the world. I looked at Sir Edmund Hillary like, man, that guy was trying to do something nobody had ever been done. And he did it gracefully. Like he was encouraged and excited to go and do it. I'm looking at SEAL training. Yeah, it's going to be hard. But a lot of people, tons of people have failed, but tons of people have accomplished it. Right? What do they have that I don't have?
Yeah.
Like that was one of many perspectives I had. And so the facts were the same, but the way that I looked at them, my view of them, my specific perspective enabled me. It was a piece of my mindset that allowed me to make it through training. I use perspective so much, and we'll talk about it more later this month. I use perspective so much to get through SEAL training.
Yeah. I love that. Very last, G, and definitely not least, is alignments. Now, we did an episode on that about great relationships in it was episode 25. Look, we looked at alignments as being external support to, they're your external support to help you reinforce the beliefs and your ability to reason, judge, and conceive. Like your alignments are like a force multiplier in all of those areas that just accelerates.
Just to make alignments really easy. There's a lot of, again, go to our episode on alignments, number 25, but just one easy example of alignments. It's like, man, if you're trying to like build your faith, get around other people that have faith.
For sure.
If you're trying to like be more successful as an entrepreneur, hang out with other people who are successful entrepreneurs. That's not just because they'll open doors for you. They have their mindset is aligned with yours. We're trying to grow. We're trying to better ourselves. We look at difficult situations and we see possible. Right? Like that's one of the powers of alignment. It's external support for your mindset, right? And you've got to understand also when you know that this is a piece of your mindset, when you have to put yourself in a situation like I was in SEAL training where I had no alignment support for my mindset, I better be rock solid in the other areas because I had no strength of alignment for my mindset in SEAL training. So I couldn't rely on this piece. My other pieces had to be rock solid. And alignment's not our last piece. We have one more, which is motivation.
Oh, right.
Motivation and drive is the last key element we're going to talk about today for mindset. And where alignment is this external support for your way of thinking, motivation and drive is the internal support for your mindset.
Shoot, that is an example of my notes letting me down there, friends, and you heard it live on air. So thank you, Garrett, for catching that for us. So yeah, that's 11 different elements of a great mindset. A mindset that's going to help you do the impossible and truly squeeze every drop of potential out of yourself. So we're going to wrap up, G. Before we do, just to say, you heard us mention it.
If you're wondering where we came up with this list of 11 things that build your mindset, it's from our course, Mindset Mastery. There's one other topic which we didn't mention, but we have 12 topics throughout 12 months of the year. Last month, we dove into principles, and this month we're by the time this episode comes out, we'll have already started talking about perspective. We're spending a month on each of these because the point is we want to teach you how to think and how to build a mindset for your unique purpose, right? You don't need my mindset. You don't need Kobe's mindset. You need to know how to build the mindset you need to reach your purpose.
Yeah, and that's why we put that whole program together. If you're listening to it and going, oh, I missed it, you didn't. You can literally join any time that you want. If you go to theimpossible.life, you'll see it on there, and you can go get more information about it. And truly, when we started this podcast, I didn't realize at the time, but that was what I identified in you that I thought everybody could benefit from. I was like, this guy has a mindset. I just watched you in enough different scenarios and was like, I've never seen you not win, like not be, and not even not win, but just, even when it was like, oh, things aren't going well, you weren't flustered, you didn't panic, you figured it out, right? You were the type of person that could figure it out no matter what came about. And I was like, I watched some of the things the way you thought and tapped into that myself. And I was like, more people need that. So that was the inception of this podcast. And it's also the inception of the very first thing we've ever done to really offer people a deeper dive in mindset mastery.
So I have two challenges today. One, my challenge will be if you're someone who's been listening to this podcast for a while and you've seen great value out of it, I would encourage you to join us in Mindset Mastery.
Yeah, for sure.
It is absolutely worth its weight, and it will help you grow, and it'll help you develop this. But listening to a podcast is going to help you develop a mindset. But why wouldn't you invest in yourself to get there faster, to get there sooner? That's the point of paying for something. That's the point of investing in yourself. Saying I'm choosing something and saying I want this to grow. Why would you not want your mindset to grow, right? Why would you not want to know how to build a great mindset for whatever it is that you do? Yeah. Whether it's being a mom, whether it's being a business owner, whether it's being a teacher, whether it's being a police officer, whatever it is that you do, and we all have many missions. You want to have the right mindset for that mission. And here's the second challenge I have for you. For all of these elements, a lot of us will have one or two of these elements that we're strong at. Like the robot tadpole, as Nick called him, discipline was his thing, right? Like he was on it. Everyone should learn from this guy in discipline. But robot tadpole should also look at himself and say, okay, under looking at these key elements and the mindset that I have and what I want to accomplish with my mindset, are there some areas here where I know I have struggle?